broadcasting around the world. This is the Hard Asset Money Show. Serious talk about what's happening and how you profit. Hosted by Christian Briggs. Follow him on X at BMC_HAM. Live in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back. This is Christian Briggs on the record. And today we're going to be talking a lot about the economic, I don't want to say standstill, because obviously business is continuing to go on with the shutdown, as well as the tariffs that have been mitigated. I guess there's been some controversy and some risk. So we're going to go on the record today. And what we're going to do is we're going to talk about specifically how is the tariffs, and there's plenty of them still installed. And for the benefit of what a lot of people don't understand is to be able to generate extra revenues for the U.S. government. You know, federal government's a little bit behind the eight ball there on that whole debt thing and deficit spending. And then we're going to say exactly how that's affecting the economy, especially the bottom half of America, the most economically depressed people, especially with inflation that the Biden administration threw on us. That was just horrible, terrible, terrible. And then we're going to talk a little bit about tariffs, shutdown, and then what's the overall economic outlook? Why is the economy for the top 20% doing so well, and why is it doing so poorly for the bottom 50%, let's say? And people in the middle are doing okay, people at the top doing good, and the people on the bottom are doing not so good. So we're going to talk about that today. We're going to take a break. We'll be right back. 30 seconds. Don't go away. This is On the Record with Christian Briggs, and we're going to have a great show.
This podcast is brought to you by Hard Asset Management. We have the lowest prices on all precious metals. Call us at 844-426-4653. That's 844-426-4653.
Welcome back. So today what we're going to do is we're going to be talking a lot about the tariffs. You know, it's been a long road. Remember back in 2017 when Trump did his first term, he basically said we're going to do the tariffs in China because they're doing two things, which I agree with 100%. They were doing artificial devaluation, or really suppressing their currency to make that currency of theirs cheap. What they call it, the RMB, or the digital, scratch that, not even, well, it is digital yuan now, but it was just called the yuan. And what they wanted to do is to make it that currency was way less expensive than what it would have otherwise been, so they could entice manufacturers to come there and with their hard currency or a more expensive currency be able to buy a lot more of what was really deemed to be manufactured goods, whatever that was. From plane parts to car parts to sofas to tents to shoes. Pretty much anything you want can be made in China. Fast forward now, the currency is still artificially suppressed, but stronger than it was because the dollar obviously has kind of come down, and that has kind of put a little bit more aligned in with the yuan. Not great, but good. Now the digital yuan is out, which has become the new central bank digital currency for all of China and parts of Asia and so forth. But that's another whole show. We'll talk about that. What we got to do is talk about these tariffs and why are they so important? Why is it that so many people have, in some cases, benefit tremendously? In many cases, it's been a tax on them. Even though people don't want to say it's a tax. Well, it's a tax by all definitions because the Supreme Court is going to hear arguments on it this week, and it's, you know, I'm telling you right now, this is a tax here. I mean, I got my notes here, and you know, I can tell you this: whenever the federal government charges for something, you can call it a fee, you can call it a tax, you can call it just the way life is, but it's still costly. And you know, people think, oh, it's nothing more than a way of which to compete in the global market. I don't know. We'll see. We're going to talk about that. I'll let you decide. I'll let you decide if it's a tax, if it's a needed revenue. Probably isn't needed revenue. Anything right now we need. But is it more of a revenue that taxes American citizens or people here, certainly in the United States, unfairly? And that's an argument. I mean, it's a discussion we need to have, and let's talk about that. So tomorrow, you know, later this week, we're going to have the Supreme Court hear our arguments. These arguments are going to be very clearly defined as, is the tariffs authorized by the President of the United States to be imposed, and are those tariffs constitutional, or are they a tax, which means only Congress can authorize a tax? So let me just read you a few things here because I want to make sure I get this statement very clear. I don't want to add anything to it. I want you all to be able to see the value of our Constitution, and it's a very amazing document. And hopefully the Supreme Court will adhere to it always, even in light of my bias. If someone said to me, do you have a problem with the tariffs? And I'll be like, well, based on what we need right now, I don't know. Here's what we got. The Supreme Court is set to hear arguments on the legality and the authority President Trump has used to impose the lion's share of the tariffs. No question. That in part because observers are split about how things will play out once deliberations begin and ahead of a decision that could come before the end of the year. I think it's going to come before the end of the year because this is something that, if it is deemed to be unconstitutional, and man, God help us if they do, but legally and ethically and constitutionally, it is a tax. Just like the Affordable Care Act, when they had the mandate for you have to have insurance, it's a tax. It's what it is. Even Judge Roberts, who sided with the ACA, Affordable Care Act, Obamacare, said it's kind of a tax, and we're going to let it go through. And the reason he said that was it's already 2 years in the making, and we're just not going to put that genie back in the bottle because you can't. And too many people had it. But he did agree it was a tax, and it was unconstitutional. It violated the interstate commerce laws of the Constitution. Hopefully, the right thing will always be done. In spite of what you may personally want, you got to do the right thing at all times, or the other side or the other party or the other guy, you know what he's going to do? I'll tell you what he's going to do. I'm glad you asked that question, by the way. What's he going to do? What he's going to do is he's going to go out there and he's going to say, well, that guy did it. That Donald Trump did it. And if Donald Trump did it, I can do it as a Democrat or a socialist Democrat, or how about worse, a communist Democrat, like what's being put forth in the Democratic Party these days. So let's talk about that. As for the projections, the odds are notable in how little confidence there is in any outcome. I don't know what the hell that means because nobody, I guess, knows which way they're going to go, but there's going to be a side. And whatever that side is, you gotta live by it, because the Supreme Court is not to make law. It is to interpret the laws or the executive orders, which are laws until they're either squashed or effectively approved. And legislation is really supposed to be going through Congress of this. But this was something we needed to do pretty quickly. Both Raymond James Managing Director Ed Mills and Vita Partners Managing Partner Henrietta Treyes floated coin flip level 50-50 odds. That's pretty funny. It's kind of where I was too. With Treyes adding a base case from 50 to 65% odds that the Supreme Court will side with the two lower courts and say the president doesn't have the authority. See, that's the kicker. Two lower courts, and they're not liberal courts necessarily, said very, very clearly that you cannot impose taxes upon the American citizen by an executive order. Only the authority of Congress has to make that case and to pass that law, and then eventually, or pass the legislation, and then the president would sign it into law. The case centers on a 1977 law called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, IEEPA, which gives the president the ability to declare an emergency for economic and financial reasons to take action, but doesn't specifically outline tariffs as a remedy. So that's the interesting part. I mean, it's kind of like saying the dog intended to go poop on the rug. I saw it. He didn't do it, but I saw it. He was going to do it. So I beat him. I punished him because he was going to do it. Technically, he didn't do it, but he probably was going to do it. And so that's wrong. Nothing, to me, this is splitting a hair in a way. But, however, the intention was to try to bring in revenues massively and level the playing field on trade negotiations. And I get it. No problem with that whatsoever. Trump and his team have seized on the law to declare a variety of economic emergencies over issues from fentanyl to trade imbalances, and many of them impose blanket tariffs on the world in response. You know, they did. They hit us hard. Other people did it. We did it. And I'm not so sure it's going to turn out to be the best course of action. It was a course, but sometimes you have to walk that walk in order to understand where you're going and the obstacles to get there. Now, we say is don't think that you know the man until you walk in his shoes and then later walk in the steps. So I understand it had to be done in order to be able to determine if it was the best course of action, which may or may not. The jury is still out. The history books will show it later. The plaintiffs in the case say the president has gone too far, and some have even floated the chance that the Trump administration may need to refund the tariffs if a decision doesn't go his way. Yeah, that's not going to happen. That's not going to happen. There's no way. It's not going to happen. So, meanwhile, other Trump tariff authorities, such as the so-called Section 232 tariffs that have allowed sector-specific duties on goods like automobiles and steel, are not up for debate this week. That's good. On Tuesday afternoon, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt allowed that the White House is always preparing for Plan B in case the ruling doesn't go Trump's way, but maintained that we are confident and hopeful the Supreme Court will do the right thing. Of course, they're going to do the right thing. Whatever the Constitution says is the right thing to do. You don't want to coerce or manipulate Chuck Schumer or threaten Chuck Schumer, anything with the Supreme Court. Did I tell you that Chuck Schumer did that once, twice, three times? Openly, by the way, threatened the Supreme Court. Terrible, terrible, terrible person. In an already volatile week for stocks, markets will likely have only the tone and tenor of the justices' questions to go on. So basically, as they make the oral arguments, and they will make some great oral arguments, both sides are going to make very passionate oral arguments. Make no mistake about it. You'll want to vote both ways, just because the Constitution needs to be upheld. We also have a deficit and debt problem. So the question is, do we mitigate the risk of default with giving the tariffs a big thumbs up, or do we follow the Constitution and say we've got a standard, don't break that line, don't cross it, don't do anything with it. Like they always say, you can get to the rule, don't break the rule. You get to the line, don't cross that line. And so the question is, what do we do? I'm going to leave this one for the magistrates. Much more experience on some of that constitutionality stuff than most people. However, as far as constitutional goes, you've got to make sure that you stand by the Constitution. And if you don't, and you're going to start to water it down, and you're going to say, "Oh, this is something that, well, it was meant in good faith to be this or that." Remember, the other side, the other guy, will easily take that and run with it, and maybe he'll take it to the next level, and the next level, and the next level. Beware of any overreaction. Brian Gudner, Stifel's chief Washington policy strategist, warned investors in his own note. His expectation is that the markets are pricing in a likely victory for Trump's side, but that the back and forth could upset expectations. I don't know about that. I don't know if the markets are going to care about the tariffs that much. I actually think if the tariffs are found to be unconstitutional, the markets may actually like them because it lowers inflation overnight. I mean, there is definitely going to be, and there is, if anybody says that you're paying 50% more for that or anything, and that's not an inflationary pressure, of course it is. It's a tax. You're paying more. It's what it is. And there is inflation. You may bake it into your margins. The importers may just eat it, but it's inflation if they pass it on. At least some of the intensity of this week subsided when Trump opted not to attend Wednesday's arguments in person, as he suggested he might. However, the spotlight remains on Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent, set to attend instead. I know I heard about Trump coming there. You can't do that. Come on, man. Let's not bring the whole freak show there, the whole administration. Let's keep it civil. Let's keep it respectful. And let's make it to where they have all the information they need at their fingertips to make a very well-informed decision, right, wrong, or indifferent. It's going to be done. The uncertainty over Trump's tariffs at the court mirrors a larger question. This is a note here that I really think we should talk about whether his party may be rating a pushback to this tariff approach. In other words, last week the Senate voted to terminate Trump's tariffs on goods from Brazil and from Canada. with Senators Lisa Murkowski of Alaska, Susan Collins of Maine, Mitch McConnell of Kentucky, and Rand Paul of Kentucky all joined the Democrats in a rare rebuke to Trump. Rebuke this, whatever. These measures may end up being largely symbolic. No kidding. With House Speaker Mike Johnson likely able to block the House from ever taking up these resolutions and those things, you don't need to. I don't think you need to. I think what you need to do is just let the Supreme Court hear the arguments, quit trying to legislate this from the pulpit on the floor, and let justice be served through the branch of the government that serves that justice, the Supreme Court. But then we get a lot of people who like to be seen and heard, and they love the camera. Cameras are fun. Cameras are great. Well, they can be. That has upped the stakes. I put a note here. Trump himself saying in recent days that the most important subject discussed by the Supreme Court in 100 years, and that the economy will go to hell if the ruling isn't in his favor. I quoted him on that. I don't know about that. I don't think you're going to have the whole world just end up imploding and the U.S. going into a sinkhole. Look, I love Trump. I love the policies, but I'm not going to agree with every single thing he says because I don't agree with what he says sometimes. So when people say, "Well, what don't you agree with?" I always say the things I don't align myself with, and that is sometimes being a little bit too vocal. Let people just do what they do. They're going to do it regardless of how much influence you give them. If you give them a passionate argument and really common sense reasoning to go either way, and this is by either one. I mean, they're going to have a lot of people on the, like in a debate, you got the affirmative and the narrative. And so you're going to have a lot of people on both sides of this debate, and they're going to be very passionate about it. They love the country. They love the understanding of what we're trying to accomplish. But even Trump's got to admit, if we're not upholding the Constitution on the conservative side, how do you expect the liberal side to do it if we're not doing it? We have to be the example. You have to lead by example. The eventual decision will come after the court's 6 conservative justices have often ruled in Trump's favor, and that's a fact. Those decisions, however, on issues from spending authority to his immigration policies have been temporary wins for Trump, allowing his policies to continue for the time being. That is true. And in part here, the tariff decision, whichever way it goes, is likely to have a much longer lasting impact. We're going to take a break right now. I'll be right back. And we're going to go into even further detail on who's going to make some of these arguments, why they're passionate about either with Trump or against Trump. And really, it's not against Trump. It's really just trying to maintain the consistency of adhering to the Constitution that the Supreme Court wants to align itself with. They don't want to be the guys and the gals and the people or the justices that said, "Oh, we decided a whole new way of life is going to happen. We're not going to do that. We're going to be biased and be political about it." Nobody wants that. People want that at some point, but then when they think about it, they don't want that because it's not right. And if it's not right now, it's not going to be right now later. And if the other guy gets it, who runs the other party, you don't want that either. No. I don't want a Democrat hitting me up for stuff and me hitting him up for stuff. You don't want that. You want everyone to agree. Let's agree to disagree on some issues, but let's agree to agree the Supreme Court has to be the final say. And so what we're doing is arguments against the tariffs. This is the two parties. I want to make sure that you've got arguments for and arguments against. Let's dive deep into what are the arguments. Why would somebody think that the president has gone a little over his authority with the way he wrote the executive orders on the tariffs, and the tariffs themselves are taxes? So I'm going to tell you the arguments against the tariffs, and then we're going to go through why they think it is legal on the administration side. And it very well may be. Maybe there's something here I'm missing, and I would be loved to be the first to be wrong on this. But again, I got to say to the Constitution, if we start moving from the principles, then the principles don't exist, and it's a free-for-all, and we don't want that. Tariffs are taxes. The challengers argue that the power to regulate importation under the IEEPA, remember what I said just a few minutes ago, does not include the power to impose tariffs, which are a form of taxation that only Congress has the power to enact under the Constitution, and that's absolutely correct. From a legal standpoint, And we'll get into the ethical standpoint and the needed standpoint and the Trump standpoint. Like they always say, there's three truths in sometimes certain people's arguments: his way, her way, and the truth. Right? That's what I always say. Unusual and extraordinary emergency not met. This is interesting because when I was reading this for the last couple of days, I was like, I had to read it over and over because I had to kind of get my head wrapped around it. They contend that the emergencies cited, such as trade deficits, are not unusual and extraordinary as required by law. Okay. They didn't think that the tariffs were being imposed as an emergency statute to be able to justify all of that. Unconstitutional delegation of power. Again, these are good arguments because when you look at the bedrock, the Constitution, and the way in which it was written, the founding fathers knew that they had to try to keep as many people within a limited grab of power. And those people are obviously White House, presidents, or Congress, and they've got to try to move them in such a way that would afford them limited power, not full-blown executive power to do whatever they want. So unconstitutional delegation of power. Some argue allowing the tariffs under the IEEPA would grant the president unchecked power, violating the principle that Congress cannot delegate its core lawmaking powers to the executive branch. That's a good one. That's a good one. I'm not saying that's perfect, but it's well understood that it's not wrong. I mean, you could make a few more fancy words in there. You could even make it a little bit longer, more common sense for the layman. But I don't think you could get it much better for just easy to understand. I mean, some people are like, well, what does that mean? Delegate its core lawmaking power. Basically, what they're trying to say is, let me just make it simple. The president can't assume the power of Congress because he's got a pen, like Obama did. Judicial reviews is appropriate. Challengers argue that courts can and should review the president's determination of an emergency as it is a matter of statutory interpretation, not a political question outside the court's expertise. I got to agree with that one. These arguments, I read these things 4 and 5 times over the last few days before they go to Supreme Court. And I was like, these are not bad. And I checked them, and they'll hold water. Now, they do hold water, but that doesn't mean you can't put the water in a different container. Still holds water. It's just a different container. So when you want to hear what the Trump container is to hold the water, let me tell you. Glad you asked on that one again. All right. Here's what we got. This is probably, at least I think, is probably one of the better reasonings. I mean, there's definitely taxation going on here. People call it, no, it's just a fee. Let's talk about it. So what are the arguments of the administration? Okay, here it is. The administration contends that the president's power to regulate importation under the IEEPA is broad enough to include imposing tariffs as a tool for managing trade, national security, and emergencies. The administration argues that issues like trade imbalances and drug trafficking constitute unusual and extraordinary threats that require an emergency response, that there are matters best left to the judgment of the executive branch. I think both of those are correct in a lot of ways. However, it doesn't meet the burden of proof that we are in an emergency situation, that an imminent threat to the sovereignty, the safety, the financial portions of the United States markets, whether it's the safety, okay? That's an imminent threat to the safety of American citizens. That is national security risk. That it's a threat to the way of which government works, or the way being of how things are done every day. That without the tariffs, we might have deficit spending that is so extraordinarily large, we don't have that revenue, that it might be a financial catastrophic event that could happen. We need these additional revenues. All of that makes sense. All of that is a true blue, this could happen. We're going to take a break right now. We'll be right back. We're halfway through the show. Don't go away. This is Christian Briggs. On the record with myself, Christian Briggs, the host. We're going to be back with some more on the tariffs and the economic impact of them and the shutdown. We'll be right back. Okay, welcome back. Here we go. We're finishing up the understanding of the oral arguments that are taking place right now, this week, here in the United States in front of the Supreme Court, people that are passionate that their tariffs are taxation, unauthorized by Congress. The executive branch cannot do that. And then there's administration arguments by very smart, sound, clever, good people, lawyers, that'll be arguing that it is constitutional and this is not a tax, but it can be imposed under emergency, financial, or extraordinary threats to the sovereignty of America, whether it's, again, I said, like safety and national security or economic and fiscal catastrophic. I mean, all of these things, they make sense. Bottom line is they do make sense, but the question is, does that sense add up to be constitutional? We're going to find out in about 6 to 8 weeks, if we're lucky, or let's say 12 to 16 weeks if it does a normal course. I think it's going to happen soon. I wouldn't be surprised if you get something within the next 30 to 45 days back, maybe before the end of the year or right into 1st of January, first quarter. I'll be right back. Don't go away.
The Hard Asset Money Show will be right back after a word from our sponsor. In uncertain times, the smartest money doesn't sit in the stock market, it holds weight. The price of gold has risen from $1,700 an ounce in 2020 to over $3,800 by late 2025. Silver is currently around $46 an ounce, a 155% increase from roughly $18 5 years ago. Follow on X at BMC_HAM for all news and the latest developments. Gold has more than doubled in just 5 years, rising from $1,700 an ounce in 2020 to over $3,800 an ounce by September 2025. That's a 124% gain, outperforming the market and proving why gold is the ultimate long-term hedge. As global debt soars and currencies weaken, central banks are hoarding gold at record pace. Why aren't you? Call 844-426-4653 or visit bmcham.com. Protect your future with real assets. Own gold now.
They may allow it to happen long enough to where they're like, okay, you don't have to refund the money, but you can't go any further. That would be very logical. You've already raised the money. You can't send it back. So what do? You just stop imposing the tariffs, but you keep the cash you made. That would not surprise me, that argument. Because the genie can't get put back in the bottle, but the bottle can be put away on the shelf, and the genie can be put into COVID, pandemic, home confinement or some crazy thing where it's like you can't leave. You can't go in the bottle. We can't get you back in it, but you can't leave the house. You're done until legislation makes you or allows you or sets you free. So the tariff genie may have to be put on the back burner and somewhere. So who knows? But it's having an impact. I do think the tariffs are increasing inflation. It's just the inflation is not reflective of all those quite yet. But it is creating a little bit of a hardship for that bottom half of America because look, they're making 60, 70, 80,000 a year, and they're trying their very best to pay for the things. Because remember, we import like 70, 80% of everything we manufacture, or certainly a big portion of it. It's in that 65 to 75, 85 range. It varies because we've obviously started to bring home some of that manufacturing. But you go look over the last couple of years, it's a very high number, very high percentage, very high. 2/3, 3/4, it's high. So in that case, if the dollar goes down, which it has, and the tariffs are applied on those goods, which they have, and that can be a tax, which there is, it's basically a tax, and it's inflationary. Someone's eating it, and sometimes I think 87% of the tariffs are being paid by consumers so far that I heard. So let's talk about the shutdown. And now with tariffs and shutdown and the slowing of the economy, it's pretty bad. I mean, it's bad in the bottom half. Gold is obviously showing its resilience and showing really that it is one of the big things that it's showing is that the dollar is going down in buying power, and that's a big part of the economy. And we need that dollar to stay strong for the time being. And so I think what the economy is going to do, since we're in the last half of the show here, let me give you what I feel is going to happen. I think we're going to have a slowdown. I think AI is going to be a big part of that slowdown. That's going to replace a lot of jobs that are being eliminated that are current, of jobs that 5 years ago would have been a part of a company's baseline hiring. And they're not just not going to hire because they're replacing it with both robotics, which is replacement of physical being, all the way to software, which takes over a lot of the software tasks that are being done by critical infrastructure as well as people. And they're going to replace a lot of different things. That is hurting not the economy. The economy can actually continue its productivity. It's the production of of goods and services doesn't always have to be implied that it's only employees that make it happen. It's all based on the results. In other words, productivity doesn't have to be always humanly based. It can be, well, in this case, robotic and AI based, mechanical. That productivity, I'll give you an example. In China, one of the leading car manufacturers there, Xiaomi, has been able to make cars by the thousands per hour in full automotive robotic AI environment, replacing humans that were making a few cars, then 10 cars, 20 cars per hour. Now they're making 1,000 cars per hour. That system has brought down the price of that car so much so that we can't compete with that car. So that car is not allowed to be sold in the U.S. Not a bad thing, I guess. Certainly don't want to hurt our domestic manufacturing of anything of the automakers. But what's happening is that is not necessarily hurting the economy. It's actually increasing profits at the baseline for companies. So in other words, their bottom lines are increasing multiples because now the hiring has become a one-time thing and it's at pennies on the dollar. So it's increasing productivity, efficiency, and the bottom line. So what I I look at this here, I'm going to put my notes out. Here, let me do this. All right, pull this up real quick. This is alarming. I got to tell you, it's alarming. It's alarming for me to get my head wrapped around it. I'm very, very familiar with this stuff. I mean, very familiar with all this. But the fact that it's happening so fast. As AI is both replacing and creating jobs, its adoption is often more successful when it augments human roles rather than completely replacing them. And I put that in my little notes here, and I did a write-up here on this. And I said that it's like a hybrid car. You can have a fully electric car, and they do great, sort of. And then a gas car, which does great, sort of. But as a hybrid, would you take the electrical value and the gasoline value of the gas engine with the electric? You basically have a hybrid. That is the most efficient way of transportation, bar none. Now, if it gets into trucks or planes or trains and all that kind of stuff, that's different. But for the average car, a hybrid is extremely cost effective to maintain. The gas mileage is phenomenal. It doesn't take all of the batteries that a conventional electric vehicle. What are you going to do with it after 8 or 10 years? Those batteries are worthless. Your car is worthless. I mean, you got to spend $20,000 or $30,000 on battery pack. How stupid is that? It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I've heard some dumb stuff. So all fully electric cars, it's kind of like I hope that you get free masks and a pair of Crocs with it. I love Crocs, but I don't like them that much. So you get free Crocs. You get a free pair of green shorts, preferably military style, kind of like cargo shorts, and a tank top that says, I vote Kamala, and a free mask and an electric vehicle. That's what you get when you buy all that stuff. But if you buy a hybrid, you're cool. That's cool. Because why? You're getting the boast of engine meets electric, meets high horsepower, meets efficient. That's because you're smart. There you go. Not that gas engines aren't for smart people. They are. They've been smart for 100 years. But the hybrid cars are the best in the sense of long-term as well as maintaining and ownership and resale value. There's no doubt about it. So why the heck would anybody do anything different? I don't know. We'll talk about that one day. Jobs most vulnerable to AI, repetitive and routine tasks. Oh boy. When I wrote this, I looked it up, and I looked up again thinking I could find a different answer, and I couldn't. Jobs involving data entry, bookkeeping, and basic customer service are highly susceptible to automation by AI. No, they're not highly susceptible. They're eliminated. Let's just be honest. You get somebody in customer service. Hi, this is Christian. How may I help you? That job is called Toodles. Like, boop, you're out. Kind of like the LA Dodgers went, boop, hit that home run the other night. Go Dodgers for the World Series. Manufacturing and production. Oh, here's another one. Apple, Amazon, Costco, Walmart, you name it, Target. They're all doing all of this. Tasks that can be automated with robotics, like those attempted at Tesla 3 model workshop, can lead to production issues when AI systems are not properly supported by human staff. Wrong. That's wrong. I had to argue with that one. I'll tell you why it's wrong. Because Xiaomi and a host of other BYD car manufacturing in China has proven there's no humans anywhere near the assembly lines. When the CEO of Ford earlier this year went to China to look at car manufacturing, he came back, it was like, Mr. President, we're in bad shape. They can make a car twice as good for half the money and sometimes a quarter of the money. It's a disaster here compared to there. They're doing it right. It wasn't well received, but he wasn't lying. He was true. We spent $27 trillion on wars, and I'm not sure what. Because remember the Pentagon, $2.3 trillion was missing the day before 9/11? Who knows? $4.7 trillion was gone, vanished under Biden, gone. I don't know where it's at. What didn't get put into automation, didn't get put into improving American lives. It got put into somebody's pocket, and it wasn't mine. And if it was mine, I wouldn't be here. But I would send you a nice postcard from where I was, and with some really cool pictures. Complex technical and regulatory roles. Jobs like surgeons, which have high stakes decisions and regulatory concerns, are less likely to be fully replaced by AI. Wrong. I've already seen surgeries done with like all these robotic things. Today you can't make it fully automated, but ask me in 5 years. AI is doubling in its knowledge and capabilities of learning and regenerating more and more information to be able to apply to everyday use almost daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly. It's amazing how fast this stuff. So basically, as what I'm saying is when you have doctors, lawyers, accountants, everybody, customer service, fast food, taxis. Do you think there's going to be taxi drivers, Uber drivers in 5 years? No, not at all. They're already doing autonomous driven. Have you been for a drive in one of those things, like Waymo and Ubers and all their testing? It's incredible. So they say that complex technical and regulatory roles, they've already got the first AI prime minister. I forgot what country it was. Hold on. I'm going to look that one up. What's the first AI? Yes. Albania appointed the world's first AI minister, Delia, in September of 25, just this year, a few months ago. While there isn't a prime minister that is an AI, Delia was appointed by Prime Minister Edi Rama to serve as a cabinet minister. What are we coming to? Okay. The role is to manage public tenders and fight corruption in Albania's government. That's one reason. Who? The AI system is called Delia, which means son in Albanian. Delia is the Minister of State of Artificial Intelligence responsible for ensuring public tenders are 100% transparent and free of corruption. As far as you know, that computer may have nefarious ideas being pushed buttons by bad actors. How do you know the developer doesn't write in some code there that makes them evil and diabolical and corrupt and wire monies to God knows who and where? It's unbelievable. How unbelievable we have come from a world to this. And pretty soon, what are we going to do? Do they need us? Significance. Her appointment marks the first time an AI system has been given a cabinet-level government position. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Okay. That's one reason. That's one reason to make her. She's going to keep everything on the straight and narrow. She's going to keep everybody happy. She's going to keep everybody honest. The truth will set you free. Of course, if you're not an AI avatar like she is, I'm not sure she's free. But maybe she'll set everybody free. Or maybe not. Maybe this is the beginning of having all politicians become an AI program, a piece of code. What if you are in a meeting for 6 hours and she never leaves to go to the bathroom because she doesn't have to, but you want to, and she doesn't understand that, and she says, "No, you can't do that. I don't do that." It's pretty weird. It's pretty weird, but it's real. The world has its first AI government official. This is great. Albania's prime minister has installed a new minister. No kidding, and it's not human. Okay, these are the headlines. This is like crazy. Oh, it gets better. It gets better. And just when you thought it can't, it does. You ready? The world's first AI minister is pregnant with 83 offspring. Oh, she's a female. Oh, so she's a female avatar. Got it. Okay, how can she be pregnant? Well, let's find out, because this is weird. This isn't just weird. This is really weird. Albania is breaking all kinds of ground these days. It became one of the earliest nations to deploy an AI chatbot, Diala, as a public administration assistant. And I don't disrespect to Daila. Daila. I hope I'm saying your name properly. I want one of your 83 kids to, come and shoot me or something, or chop my head off because I said your name wrong. So I apologize in advance. As they become the first country with an AI government official, when it elevated the chatbot to the role of Minister of State for Artificial Intelligence. The Balkan country isn't slowing down either, because now Daila is pregnant. Okay. Hey. That's according to Prime Minister Edi Rama, who announced the happy news in front of the Berlin Global Dialogue over the weekend. As reported by ABC News Albania, Daila, which will soon be sharing her children with government officials loyal to Rama's party, the center-left Partia Socialiste, basically communist and socialist. Daila is pregnant and expecting 83 children, one for each member of our parliament, who will serve as assistants to them, who will participate in parliamentary sessions and take notes on everything that happens, and who will inform and suggest to the members of parliament regarding the reactions. Now, we talked about tariffs. We talked about the government shutdown, and it's about to come to an end. And shutting down may not be as bad, because if this AI goes into this level of integration into our society and our entire business world, the shutdown will be meaningless, because you're not having to lay anybody off, because it's all going to be AI. It's all, look at what's happening. Millions of people that have been working are either on the way out or been given, kick the can. There you go. Take your pencil, take a can, go sell them. You're done on the corner, 10 cents a pencil, because your job is eliminated, and jobs that would have been around, they're out. Get out of here. We're never going to hire you anyway, with robots and stuff. Look at Amazon. Look at everybody. So this is just another way to show you that they're taking this serious around the world. They are taking this seriously. That AI, in its weirdest form, and it's weird to have a prime minister having 83 children at one time, who's a computer algorithm, who doesn't exist. If I shut this laptop, that laptop is done. It's still here for the next time I open it up, but it's done. It's not going to do anything. Turn it off, pull the battery out, it's done. But yet you can give it responsibilities and authority that supersedes your own rights. It's weird. And that's the weirdness that we've got. And it's not going to stop. It's here to stay. So what I'm telling you right now is, there is going to be a point one day where the basic understanding of the way we got here was through greed and profit. I'm not so sure AI is going to be our best friend. I'm not so sure we need to take it to this level to where it completely engulfs everything we do. I don't think so. You're welcome to give me feedback on that. I don't think that what's going to happen is going to be necessarily great to the level they're looking at. Now, maybe today it helps in medicine, and it helps in challenge people that are hurt or unfortunate, and it may bring some relief and ways for even the less served. And I mean, it could help the lower half of America. But if we institute this thing across every single way of which our life is being touched, from business to integration into integrating it right into our social fabric. Are we going to date these people? Or people get married to these robots? I did see something that was pretty alarming too. I saw a robot that had in Japan or China. I think there's one in each. I was seeing these over the last couple of weeks, where they're showing the vitality of this robot, the skin, the eyes, the mouth, everything about it. Now, I can tell you this. It's not a cyborg that we can't determine, is it real or fake, is it foe or friend. It's not there yet, but it's close. Skynet is real. The Terminator is here. And it's not quite, it's a companion replacement. But I give it 5 years and it'll be darn close. 10 years? Absolutely. In 10 years, there'll be companion robots specifically to replace people in relationships, or obviously jobs. first and foremost, which is happening now, but in relationships. And pretty soon, you don't need the dating apps, or you don't need to be introduced with friends, or you just can be with your robot, your companion. What if we call it a companion? How do we put robot and companion together? If you know how to put robot and the word companion together into one really weird, cool, but understanding word, send that to me. That'd be great. I would love to hear that. Yeah, this is really an interesting topic. So the shutdown is hurting us, but it's not going to, it'll make it, how do I say this? I'm being gentle. We may not have those people come back. President Trump may just say, you know what? I'm going to do the Ronald Reagan thing. Air traffic controllers, you striked. I replaced you. Government officials, I can replace you with robots. May take me a year, but I'm going to replace you. I can replace you with software because I can replace you. Save the government a ton of money. The fraction of the cost to replace a person with something of superior intelligence, and it's superior intelligence, make no mistake about it, is incredible. So think about this. The next time you hear this thing about AI, is it truly, and I mean truly, a system that we want to take to that level that replaces us in every way? And then what are you going to do with the us? Somebody sent me an article a few weeks ago, and I guess there was some study done that said within the next 10 years, it actually said, or sooner, that up to 100 million people in America will be replaced by artificial intelligence across the board. That's a fact. And with that, it will replace the 100 million people. What are you going to do with them? What are you going to do? What are you going to do with 100 million people? Universal basic income, $2,600 a month, whatever. Call it a grant. I think that's what they call it. So think about that for a second. What are you going to do with them? How are you going to be able to give them something, a purpose? You can't just send them money. I guess you could. I mean, they do for welfare now, I guess. Food stamps. Well, actually, that's been cut this week. So with that said, what do you do with them? I don't know what you do with them. Do you know what you do with them? I don't think anybody knows what to do with them. Maybe somebody does, but they're not telling us. They're just eliminating them. And it's like Nancy Pelosi once said, pass the bill. Pass the bill. Guess what? Then we'll figure out what's in it. Good point. Good point. So this is Christian Briggs on the record. AI, tariffs, shutdown. The question you have to ask yourself is, are we moving forward in a direction that amplifies the value, the wonderfulness of this country? And I will say this from a selfish standpoint. The tariffs do help the bottom line, but if they're deemed to be unconstitutional, they got to be removed. And the reason is we have to live by a code, a standard. We have to be the examples, the leaders, the ones of which people look up to. It's not a party. It's the individual decision. It's the consequences of making an ill-advised decision for short-term gains that could have monumental, detrimental impacts in the long term. So don't do anything that would be $10 today, but $100 down the road to cost you. That's the thing. So in summary, what I'm saying is if you can do the right thing, do it all the time. Consistency is the key to success. Diligent mindset, not to do anything that was give the other side, the other guy said early in the show, a reason to do back to you what you may have done to him or the corners that you may have caught. And if you cut those corners, it's certainly not going to be something that goes unnoticed. It just doesn't. It's just how it works. So I would recommend when you're looking at this from the lens of the Constitution, follow the Constitution before you follow your own personal agenda. Because he who stands fast, stands tall, stands strong, will last. So again, thank you for joining us. We are very honored and very excited to be on this network. And you can always reach me anytime you need to. My email is cinsay@gmail, sinsay@gmail. Send me emails on questions or topics you want to talk about, and we're happy to help. Until then, this is Christian Briggs we are grateful and honored to be on here, and we will be with you in a few days again. Thank you.
Gold has more than doubled in just 5 years, rising from $1,700 an ounce in 2020 to over $3,800 an ounce by September 2025. That's a 124% gain, outperforming the market and proving why gold is the ultimate long-term hedge. As global debt soars and currencies weaken, central banks are hoarding gold at record pace. Why aren't you? Call 844-426-4653 or visit bmcham.com. Protect your future with real assets. Own gold now. In uncertain times, the smartest money doesn't sit in the stock market, it holds weight. The price of gold has risen from $1,700 an ounce in 2020 to over $3,800 by late 2025. Silver is currently around $46 an ounce, a 155% increase from roughly $18 5 years ago. Follow on X at BMC_HAM for all news and the latest developments.